Hi, my name is Makinie Fortino. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I also identify as a psycho-spiritual therapist, specifically Afro-spirituality. And so what that means is when I'm working with my clients and I'm assessing them, I'm doing the mental health assessments and screenings that everyone's familiar with, but I'm also doing spiritual screenings to kind of see what their spiritual gifts are and how spirit interacts with them and helps them grow and build a sense of self-worth and self-esteem. Spiritual therapy is a manual that is for spiritual enthusiasts, coaches, wellness practitioners, and also mental health practitioners. And what it does is it kind of breaks down signs and symptoms of spiritual awakenings, but it also has key terms so that when you're working with clients who identify as spiritual or religious or wanting to explore spirituality, you're able to sit with them and do that on terms that is universally understood, but also understood in the spiritual communities that your clients may be seeking. And this manual is kind of broken down into three parts. The first part is orientation, where I talk about Indigenous and African spirituality, define what spirituality is and how it applies in therapy sessions, and how it doesn't apply in therapy sessions. I include a spiritual awakening assessment that you can use sort of unofficially. It kind of takes into consideration all of the key terms and all of the signs and symptoms of spiritual awakening and just gives general questions that you can ask, or you can use it as a checklist if you're wanting to kind of get more familiar or get more comfortable, or just get a sense of what questions you can ask somebody if you're starting to see some signs and symptoms of spiritual awakening. Part 2 includes tools, tips, and interventions that are evidence-based, universally used, and very well studied. It starts off with kind of talking about the health benefits of all of the tools and tips that I include. I include 11 tools and tips and 2 bonus ones, which you can see when you purchase the book. And for any interventions that are not universally used that come from specific cultures, I give credit to ethnic and religious groups who are founders of anything that has to do with very specific culture-related interventions that can be used. And part 3 kind of ties everything together, and I include a really cool diagram where everything that I explain in the book is also in that diagram that shows the direct connection between mind, body, and spirit. And there's also a section that includes developing a sense of authenticity as a spiritually inclined or spiritual or psycho-spiritual therapist. Because the work that I do is centered around melanated mental health, specifically mental health of those with African ancestry, I spend a little bit of time, the first few chapters, kind of outlining and giving credit to some of the originators who studied spirit, and understood that there were health benefits to eating a certain way, meditating a certain way, using certain affirmations, phrases, incorporating it into their beliefs and their daily lives, that we now in new spirituality, new age spirituality, incorporate without really thinking about or giving credit to. So I spend the first few chapters giving credit to some of the originators from India, from China, from the Americas, from the Caribbean, and those with African ancestry and various ethnic groups, to kind of establish that one, they were the founders of a lot of the practices that we do today in New Age spirituality, and also giving some humanity back and giving some credit back. A lot of practitioners tend to talk about the brain-body connection, and there are a lot of interventions that are centered around helping people regulate their system, helping people communicate more effectively, but it completely leaves out spirit. And the fact of the matter is, we are all physically animated by something that is intangible. And so what I do in this manual is I bring the intangible into focus. I give it definition, I tell you how to identify when it's making its presence known, and I also give some tools, tips, and interventions on how to foster, connect, and communicate with that thing that is animating us, which for all intents and purposes we call spirit. A lot of the spiritual practices that I chose to feature are found throughout ethnic groups all over the world. There's not necessarily a particular founder or culture who owns walking or journaling, for example. Everyone practices compassion. These are things that I talk about extensively that have been studied that you can incorporate into your everyday life and or into your practice when you're sitting with clients and see some really good results from. This manual is the connection between science and spirit. There is a direct connection between the two, and interventions that therapists can be using in sessions to help clients feel more grounded, centered, all of those wonderful things, but also feeling more connected to their own bodies and to their minds through their spirit. The act of making that direct connection with spirit is called spirituality.